Hey guys, Jen from Ezekiel Effect Ministries. Welcome back to Memorial Day, and I'm going to read Psalm 22 today. The wind blew my page here, so it's a beautiful day outside. And I did a couple other videos if you want to check it out on specifically on Memorial Day. This one is going to be just about Psalm 22, and it's from the Passion Translation. And this one's called A Prophetic Portrait of the Cross. For the pure and shining one, David's song of anguish to the tune of the deer at the dawning of the day. And it starts out by saying, the cross. God, my God, why would you abandon me now? Why do you remain distant, refusing to answer my tearful cries in the day, and my desperate cries for your help in the night? I can't stop sobbing. Where are you, my God? So here David is clearly lamenting. He's crying out to the Lord. He does feel abandoned in this particular instance. And verse 3, then he goes on to say, yet I know that you are most holy. You are God enthroned, the praise of Israel. Our fathers' faith was in you, though through the generations, they trusted in you and you came through. This is one of the things I love about the Psalms and I love about David is he can be lamenting in one moment and then the next second it switches. The tone of the Psalm switches completely and he's praising God. And I think about what it says about our Father's faith was in you. And it's like, you know, we're celebrating those who gave their lives for our country today. And we did, through the generations, they trusted in you, he said. And that is exactly how we are. Through the generations, we have trusted not only in God, we've trusted in our military. We've trusted in the protection that they offer under God. And they have, not only has God come through, our military has come through. And that's why these people have given their life, because they know that there is freedom in that sacrifice. And verse 5 says, every time they cried out to you in their despair, you were faithful to deliver them. You didn't disappoint them. But I am a worm, crushed and bleeding crimson, treated as less than human. So here he is just kind of degrading himself. I've been despised and scorned by everyone, mocked by their jeers, despised with their sneers, as all the people poke fun at me, spitting their insults, saying, is this the one who trusted in God? Well, this is exactly what happened to Jesus, right? As he was going to the cross, literally everybody was mocking him, despising him, sneering at him, poking at him, spitting on him, insulting him. I mean, the list goes on and on. So David can clearly identify with what Jesus went through as he went to sacrifice his life on the cross. And yet he did it. And yet David trusted in the Lord, even though the people were mocking him for it. And then they said, now let's see if Yahweh will come to your rescue. Let's see how much he delights in him. Literally the same thing that happened. You know, they were basically saying, come down off your cross if you're the Messiah. If you're the King of the Jews, come down off the cross. Deliver yourself. Rescue yourself. But Jesus didn't do that because that wasn't his mission. His assignment was to die for us so that the blood would cover our sins, so that we could spend eternity with Jesus. There had to be atonement for the sin of mankind. So Jesus had to die. He couldn't stop short. And so David is, you know, just an interesting parallel that he's alluding to here. Then verse 9, he says, Lord, you delivered me safely from my mother's womb. You were the one who cared for me ever since I was a baby. Since the day I was born, I've been placed in your custody. You've cradled me throughout my days, and you've always been my God. So he goes back to just even early days of life and says that even though he's got all these enemies now as an adult, God was with him. God took care of him. He was the one that, you know, kept him safe when he was growing up, when he was too little to care for himself. So he's really just It sounds like I'm very grateful here because God was always with him. He says, so don't leave me now, for trouble is all around me, and there's no one to help me. I'm surrounded by many violent foes like bulls. Forces of evil encircle me like the strong bulls of Bashan. I'm going to look down here at this little footnote. It says the root word for bull means to break or destroy. The word Bashan, although known as a fertile land northeast of Lake Galilee, so that was the lake that the disciples and Jesus were on when he calmed the storm. It's a very big lake. I was there when I was in Israel. It's beautiful. But that's what he's talking about. It's the fertile land northeast of Galilee. It's also a word for serpent. These represent the many demonic spirits who came against the Son of God as he was being crucified. So that's what we're talking about here. It's like literally demonic forces were coming against Jesus, and it was working through the people, through the Roman people, through the Jewish people, through everybody who mocked and insulted Jesus. So he's basically saying he's surrounded by many violent foes. The forces of evil encircle me like the strong bulls of Bashan. And that's what happens to us too. So another parallel, when we decide to follow Christ, you know, when you get baptized, when you start following Jesus, when you give your life to the Lord, you better get ready. You better get your prayer warriors ready. And I'm not saying it to scare you. I'm just saying it's a reality. Anybody who's doing anything for Jesus is going to receive opposition, just like David. The more you're doing for Jesus, the greater the warfare. And yet, the greater God will get the glory. So it doesn't mean we should back down and hide like Elijah did when he went and hid in the cave. We need to take a stand and also stand and rest in God's promises that he will defend us. He will protect us. And again, what an interesting parallel to Memorial Day. You know, we hopefully are not stressing about the safety of our country every day. Hopefully we trust and know that the military is protecting us, that God is protecting us. That's the whole point, is that consistency is always there, that ever-present help in time of trouble. He says, verse 13, like ravenous roaring lions tearing their prey, they pour curses from their mouth. Now I'm completely exhausted. Every joint of my body has been pulled apart. My courage has melted away. So here he is lamenting again. I'm so thirsty and parched. My tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. And now you lay me in the dust of death. They have pierced my hands and my feet like a pack of wild dogs. They tear at me, swirling around me with their hatred. A band of evil men surrounds me. So interesting. You know, this is exactly what happened to Jesus. I can count all my bones. Look at how they gloat over me and stare. With a toss of the dice, they divide my clothes among themselves, gambling for my garments. This is also kind of what happened to Joseph. He got thrown in the pit. And then when he finally got taken out, or well, actually when he was in the pit, his brothers basically took his garment, took his clothes, and they sold it. You know, they did kind of the same thing. He says, Yahweh, please don't stay far away, my strength. Come quickly to my rescue. Give me back my life. Save me from this violent death. Save my precious one and only from the power of these dogs. Save me from all the power of the enemy, from this roaring lion raging against me, and from the power of this dark horde. So here's the cool thing. David has so much faith in his God that he can cry out this way, all right? So if we don't have a relationship with God, we would not be able to, I'm looking at David here. If David did not have a relationship with God, if he didn't trust that God could handle his lamenting, his anger, his sorrow, his fear, his terror, he would not be crying out to the Lord. He would just keep it to himself, right? But because he trusts in the Lord, he can cry out to the Lord. And so that's very comforting for me, and it should be for us, because when we trust our life is in Jesus's hands and God's hands, we can cry out to the Lord